Welcome to Media Rants. I am recording less than 2 weeks from primary election day in Wisconsin. And on that day, August 11th, Wisconsin's Democrats will choose their nominee to run for governor against Republican Tom Tiffany. It's been a wild campaign season so far, but according to the latest Marquette University poll, State Representative Francesca holds a commanding lead over her opponents, which include former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley, State Senator Kelda, and former Department of Administration Secretary Joel Brennan. Now, literally 10 minutes before I hit record today, former Lieutenant Governor Barnes announced he was leaving the race, and it says in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, the decision by Barnes came amid reporting by the Journal-Sentinel about a 2025 state Democratic Party review into allegations that Barnes was taking advantage of his role in the party to have sexual encounters with young adult women. I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more about that as the next days and weeks go on. Here to help me make sense of this crazy campaign year in Wisconsin is Katie Rosenberg. Katie is the former mayor of Wausau, Wisconsin. She served in that position from 2020 until 2024. In 2024, she was appointed by Governor Tony Evers to be the first ever director of the Office of Environmental Justice in the state of Wisconsin. Katie is one of the strongest environmentalists you will find, and I've heard she's done really an outstanding job in that position. Also, in April of 2026, she won a term on the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, where she serves now. It's going to be a great interview. Katie is widely respected as one of the more insightful young progressives in the state. And stick around. I can promise you, you will enjoy this interview with former Wausau Mayor Katie Rosenberg. Katie Rosenberg, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I so appreciate it.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And why don't we start off talking about the governor's race? And I guess the real story here is the Francesca campaign. She's running stronger than anybody would have imagined at this point. What is your take on why the campaign is doing so well?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple reasons, but I think the biggest reason, I think it's the same reason we saw Donald Trump elected president. I think it's the same reason you're seeing interesting candidates winning across the country. I think the American people are seeing that the political system is broken. It's not helping real people, and they're looking for change. And so they're looking at candidates who promise that they will work towards that change. And so I think that's what she's doing. She's telling us, the system isn't working for you, but if you vote for me, I'm going to help us change this system. And people don't want it rebuilt the way it was for the last
Yeah,
250 years, right? So this is time.
it does. I agree with you. It does seem in that Marquette poll that came out that she is doing extremely well among young voters.
Mm. Yeah.
Do you see some kind of youth wave going on here?
I see a youth wave if our youthful voters get registered to vote and show up, and I think they will. I have the utmost optimism every single day. But that's really going to be the thing. There's a lot of social media buzz. There's a lot of really interesting kind of art that's being created on her behalf. I keep seeing that in social media. I love that. So I think what really needs to happen is people need to show up. But it's not just among the youth, right? I mean, my own parents are having interesting discussions about who they're going to be voting for. And my
Yeah,
dad just
she's
turned 70. So like it's one of these interesting moments,
yeah, she's doing well really among all demographics. Now,
except for maybe the
going
undecideds, right?
right, right. of which there are still are a very
30
high.
some percent. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, the race is still in play, and of course, this has
Yeah.
been such a crazy year
Yeah.
with Sarah Rodriguez, who looked like the main challenger at one
Mhm.
point, forced to back out because of financial problems in her campaign.
Mhm.
But someone who had the highest name recognition was the former lieutenant governor, Mandela
Yeah.
Barnes. And shortly before we started this interview, it was announced that he's dropping out. It looks like a perhaps another Me Too type of scandal. It's too early for any of us to know about that. But did you expect Mandela Barnes to do a little bit better in this race?
Yeah, it is surprising. And he had a lot of support from folks. And yeah, I guess I am kind of surprised, frankly. But again, this is one of those years where people are looking for change. And, I don't think he is an establishment candidate. I don't think we have really any establishment candidates, frankly, right? But yeah, I'm surprised. I don't know what else to say about that. I
Yeah,
mean, I keep hearing that there are going to be more articles being published, so we'll just keep reading as they show up.
yeah, we're going to learn a lot more about whatever his quote unquote Me Too issue is. But one of the things that comes up a lot in this race is this issue of electability.
Right.
And do you believe that, let's assume for the sake of argument that Francesca Hong stays scandal free until August 11th, gets the nomination. She would then run against Tom Tiffany. Is she the most electable in this race?
She is if the voters want her, right? I mean, and again, like so many things go into the reasons why people show up or don't show up on election day. So many reasons people buy into a political system or don't. So this is a state that went twice for Barack Obama. And I'm not saying she's Barack Obama, but I'm just saying maybe we need to think a little bit more than just this superficial kind of labels. And I'm talking across the board at any candidate, right? I've been friends with every single one of the candidates who were or currently is on that ticket. So I think every one of them has pluses and minuses.
Yeah. What did you make of Governor Evers coming out and endorsing County Executive David Crowley after saying earlier, I believe Evers had said earlier he was going to stay out of the primary. What
Yeah,
did you go ahead?
oh yeah, sorry. I'm so excited to talk about this. He makes his own decisions every time, right? And he generally wants to act when it feels the most important for him. And I guess that's what he decided. I don't have any particular insight into this. I was actually on vacation in Washington State when this all happened, and people kept texting me about it. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I know. I didn't know this was happening, but here we are." So I think he obviously feels that it's important to make a stance right now. And this is how he decided to do it. I read in some articles that he's going to be doing some campaign events coming up here. So here we go. It's on.
Yeah, did you find it interesting that Evers did not endorse anyone that was either in his cabinet or associated with him? Like, for example, Barnes and Rodriguez were both his lieutenant governors. He didn't endorse either of them. Missy Hughes, who dropped out of the race, she was his economic development person, right? Brennan, Department of Administration secretary, I guess the guy who literally writes the budget, right?
Yeah.
What do you make of the fact that the governor didn't endorse anyone that he worked closely with?
Yeah, I think a couple of things, but I do think it shows kind of the intimacy in what it's like to be an elected person in Wisconsin. Um, we know every single one of those candidates. He knows every single one of those candidates. And I think it's hard to make that decision. And I mean, he must have agonized over it, right? I mean, there's no way you make a decision like that will upset a bunch of people who maybe already voted, who maybe have very strong feelings.
Yeah.
So I don't think he took that lightly. But I think it's interesting. And I know that he knows every candidate. He's worked with them. I've seen him in photo ops, right? So it's one of those things where I'm sure it was kind of an agonizing thing.
Let's talk about Kelda Royce for a second. She's very, very low in the polls. She got the WEAC endorsement, which I think she thought would do a lot more for her. campaign. Anyone who meets Kelda, and I've met her several times, you're immediately impressed. She's smart, she's passionate, she has a total grasp of state issues. How do you explain why her campaign did not take off at all?
Yeah, I think it's hard when your base is Madison, right? And I mean, it's hard in the rest of the state. In Madison, you can do a great job. So I think that's part of it. When I think about how the candidates have approached the rest of the state, and again, I'm based in Wausau, so I have the understanding of what people are doing up here because it's obvious. And, there's really only one candidate that has been up here a ton. And I think the polls are showing that showing up in other parts of the state does matter. But again, she's brilliant. And when I think about the WEAC endorsement, I take that seriously. My husband's a teacher. He's been a member of WEAC for the last, I don't know, 25 years.
Mhm.
But we also see what kind of influence that has post Act 10. And we saw different endorsements during the superintendent race. And so I don't necessarily know if it makes the difference or not.
Right,
It does
right.
matter. It's a data point, right? But it's not the only data point.
Now that Barnes is out of the race, and he was polling, I think, at around 16% in that Marquette poll, where do you see his voters going?
It's a good question. I wish I could tell you. I
Yeah.
think there's probably a contingency that voted that wanted him in the race for specific reasons, whether it's policy, whether it's legacy, whether friends. There's so many different reasons people choose their candidates. So it's really hard for me to think where they would go, and I don't think they're a monolith.
I mean, I can see a scenario where David Crowley gets many, obviously not all, of Barnes voters, and with the assistance of Evers, is able to get a big chunk of those undecideds and pulls out a Hail Mary. I mean, at this point, anyone but Hong would have to be a Hail Mary. Is that fair?
I think so. I mean, but again, what does polling? What did this do for us 10 years ago? We had no idea, or it was going to be a blowout. It's really hard to go off of those numbers, right? I mean, I get polling calls. Do I ever answer them? I never do. And so
Right.
again, like I know we're doing scientific, there's a margin of error, all of this, but I there's still a part of me that's like, do I believe it?
Right.
But
Did
again, like the
you,
undecideds do tell me that they're talking to the right people. So
yeah. Did you get a chance to watch the quote unquote debate
I
in
did.
Milwaukee?
Yes.
Okay. I was very disappointed in that it seemed like they all went to their stump speeches.
Oh, of course.
There really wasn't any kind of clash. And I was watching it thinking they must realize that, in the polls, I agree with you, they have to be taken with a grain of salt, but no one doubts that Hong has a substantial lead.
Right.
Were you expecting more criticism of Hong, or at least more of an attempt to get her to defend her positions on issues?
Yeah, I do think some of that probably comes down to the way the debate was structured and the moderators. However, I do think those candidates are exercising an amount of discipline. We saw what happened when Brennan came out with his campaign ad that appeared to be critical. There was a lot of backfire on that. People don't like it. And in general, people say they don't like that negativity. Now, whether or not it still is influential, despite whether or not you like it, that remains to be seen. But yeah, I do think part of that is a discipline, and part of it is just seeing what happened when other candidates kind of went.
Well,
The
I don't think they have to be completely negative and nasty about it, but
sure,
I thought that the whole purpose of a primary was to really hash out
yeah,
the differences between candidates. I really don't know if that's been done. It certainly Tiffany will do it, right?
yep,
We
it's
will
already
have that.
happening.
Yeah, it's already happening. You're right. What do you think should be the two or three main issues that this governor's race should be decided on?
Yeah, I mean, I think you would be insane to not focus on economic issues. I mean, we're all feeling that pinch. The gas prices in Wausau and probably elsewhere, but we went up about 30 to 40 cents a gallon overnight. And so things like that, despite the fact that maybe the governor doesn't have the most influence over that, you do have the biggest microphone in the state. So
Yes.
it is important to continuously talk about those kind of pocketbook issues. People say they care about them, and I believe them. Um, and then, selfishly, I have some other issues that I would love to hear talked about, some of those being kind of a transition to energy that is more sustainable and reliable, especially in our state. I think we're in a spot where, we don't create our own energy. And we are definitely bumping up against a system that doesn't feel helpful towards everyday folks. And I think there's a desire for changing in that system. I would love to hear people talking about that, although I would be fine also waiting until they get into office and having a robust policy around some of these issues too. But I do think there's some of that too.
Yeah. And I need to mention, you've obviously been a leader on environmental issues. When you were mayor of Wausau, you made substantial progress on getting PFAS out of the water and other issues, getting lead
Yeah.
out. Yeah, and I think you did it the way I'd like to see more politicians do it. You paid a political price for it,
Of
right?
course.
Right. And I
Yeah.
and I think too many politicians on all sides of the aisle, the moment they see there might be a political price, they back away from it.
Oh yeah, and you see that happening all over the place. But again, we fixed the problem in Wausau. So
Yes.
aside from someone putting PFAS back into the water, this issue solved, and so future politicians and mayors of Wausau don't have to deal with it. And the lead service line replacement program that I created is still happening, and other cities in Wisconsin are doing this too. Look to
Yeah.
Racine. They signed on to do almost the exact same program Wausau's doing. Only they are doing it even better. They're focused on local workers and union work, so it's a great thing.
And absolutely. And my fear, Katie, and this is not a criticism of Francesca Hong, who I genuinely like and who I might vote for in the primary. I'm still one of those undecided, right, out
Same,
there.
same.
Right. Okay. But my fear is that it'll be like the presidential election of 24, where we've got all these literal existential issues in front of us, and instead we're going to spend the entire campaign talking about defund the police,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
I'm nervous about that too, because the people of Wisconsin deserve a much more robust political discourse on this because these policies couldn't be more different. And I don't want to hear about how extreme anyone on the left is when we have a candidate on the right who actually, like, scientifically is shown to be one of the most extreme candidates on the right. It's people are saying he's the most extreme in the House. So I don't know what to say about that. I mean, I don't think this is the same. There's not common sense versus not common sense. It's not the way this race is shaking out.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. There's been a lot of talk about the possibility of the Democrats attaining a so-called trifecta, that is, winning the governor's office, the Senate, and the Assembly. And if they pull that off, it will be the first time in many years. How realistic do you think the trifecta is?
I am not sure. See, I spent a little time agonizing over this question, but then I started thinking, you know what? Something about Wisconsin that I've seen over and over again is that we love a divided government. I mean, we do keep voting in people in opposing parties, and we want them to work together to create solutions. So I have not quite settled on the idea that a trifecta is something that's realistic. Although, every day more stories are being published that kind of are pointing to that fact.
Hmm.
But I do think that the people of Wisconsin prefer us hashing out ideas, and they like divided government. At least that's the way we've voted in the past.
Yeah, Wisconsin has a very high percentage of people that split the ticket.
We had Tammy Trump voters, right? Like it's different out here.
Yeah, Tammy Trump voters. Yeah, that's true. Tammy Baldwin and Donald Trump, which is amazing. Um, a lot of the energy right now in the Democratic Party at the grassroots level is coming from people associated with the so-called Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA, and certainly Fran Hong is associated with DSA, although at the debate she kind of backed away from some of
Sure.
their more, I'll call them controversial uh, positions. Around the country, I don't know who the establishment Democrats are, but around the country, a lot of the so-called establishment Democrats are almost as critical of the DSA, maybe even more critical of DSA than they are of Republicans. How would you account for that? I mean, do you see the DSA as a positive thing going on for the Democrats, almost like a Tea Party of the left? Or do you see it as a more divisive force going on right now?
This is such a great question. But I do think, I'm a little sister. I have an older brother, and I know what my role is in our family. And I'm the needler. I am always bugging him. I'm pushing us to a certain way. And I do think of DSA kind of in that way, right? And for a long time, DSA was young and kind of marginalized. And now they are getting more of a microphone, and people are like, oh, shoot, we should have been listening to you all along. Maybe we should have brought you along in a different way. So I do kind of see this interesting sibling rivalry relationship here, kind of fighting over the heart of the party. I do think that the majority of Wisconsinites and Americans are probably closer to that center, but that doesn't mean that some of those ideas don't appeal. If you talk to everyday normal people and they are telling you, like, I just got my hair cut the other day, and the person cutting my hair was telling me, like, I have this $1,000 bill with the doctor, and I have to go back, and I'm afraid they won't even see me because of this. I'm like, yeah, that's not fair. First of all, work with them on a payment plan. They have to see you. They can't not see you. But
Wow.
normal everyday people don't deserve that kind of behavior. And if DSA is going to be saying, hey, you deserve better, you deserve, Medicare for all, whatever that is, like, I think people are listening. They're like, you know what? I do deserve better than what I'm getting. I shouldn't have to face medical bankruptcy if someone in my family is diagnosed with cancer. That's not fair. And so I think some of this discussion probably should have taken place more and faster. And maybe we were silly to think it was over in 2010. But here we are. And I think these discussions still resonate with a lot of people who are living close to the edge.
I agree. And it's become a cliche to say, oh, yeah, well, Mom Donnie got elected in New York City, but that can't happen anywhere else, like in Wisconsin. But I think we're living in a time, Katie, where really anything is possible.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing is that it almost even explains Trump, right? I mean, say what you want about him. I think he's the worst president in U.S. history,
Right.
but he was perceived as a change agent,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Well, and that's
And
the
that's
thing.
what people are looking for. People are looking for change agents.
Yes.
And even though I don't think Kelda or David Crowley or even Joel Brennan, even though I don't think they are status quo hack politicians,
Right.
I don't think they were able to shake the perception that they are more of the way things have always been.
Right.
And people are just looking for something very new and different. You agree with that?
Oh my gosh, the system is broken, right? And I do not appreciate the way Trump has shredded the system, right? Like, that feels very destabilizing. However, I don't think when you're talking to other people about how government should be rebuilt post-Trump, they're not saying, let's build it back the way it was, because that did not work. It doesn't work for the majority of people. And so I think people are looking for folks who could rebuild a party, who could rebuild the systems to serve people instead of business needs or billionaires. Like, people are done with that. They want it serving the people.
That is so insightful, Katie, because there is this tendency to think, oh, once Trump is gone, we're just going to go back to the way things
No,
were. I
we
think
cannot
I
do that.
no,
That's the
that's really
existential crisis.
right. That's really what hurt Biden, I thought,
Yes.
right? This feeling that okay, we had this 4 years of chaos, but now everything's going to be okay again. People don't want complete dismantling and wreckage, but they certainly don't want to go back to the way things were because that got us where we are.
Yeah. And I will say, I think there was a disservice to the Biden administration. Again, like serving as a mayor during that same time frame, he changed things in a way that made the federal government so much more accessible to local government and local people. And I really wish he could have crowed about that more because it was transformational for me. I couldn't have done the things we did in Wausau without a true partner in federal government. So,
But
I mean,
yeah,
he was doing it, but a lot of that's on hold right now or being loosened up through the court system.
yeah, the Biden administration, I think, had the worst public relations team
Yes,
probably in the history of presidential politics.
it's unfortunate.
Yeah, yeah, it really was. Now, you have been working with, I guess, Ben Wikler, who was the chair of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. He's written a book. What's the title of his book?
This is the plan.
This is the plan.
Yes.
And he's getting a lot of national attention for it. Now, what role have you been playing with Wikler on this?
Yeah, so he embarked on a statewide but also national book tour.
Mm.
So he asked if I would be willing to host the book tour in Wausau. And of course, I said yes without even thinking. And so a few days later, I got a book in the mail to read. I've never had an advanced reader copy before, which I got to show off to my librarian friends, and they were very jealous. But it's a really good book. And he kind of piece by piece, and also if you've been involved in Wisconsin politics, he's maybe 4 years older than me, but he's talking about the Wisconsin I grew up in, the Wisconsin politics I grew up in, all of the same main players. It was incredible.
Wow.
So yeah, I got a chance to read the book. I asked him some questions. We got to get the audience involved. It was there were no empty seats at the Labor Temple in Wausau last Saturday.
Yeah, he Ben is widely
Yeah,
considered to have been very successful in during his tenure as party chair, even though the Democrats were never able to get the legislature. They were able to keep the governor. They didn't defeat Ron Johnson. But what was it about his tenure that you think made it successful?
yeah. I think first of all, despite like maybe the big ticket things not happening here, right? Little ticket things happened. There were some seats that were changed over that made a big difference. Keeping the governor in his seat was critical to being able to forge a policy. The maps alone, getting that fair map ruling, right? And so getting the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court was really critical. And I'm looking over the numbers as it relates to where I live. So I live in the 85th Assembly District.
Hmm.
Well, if Yi Langzhang would have been running this year on these maps, the numbers he got in this district, he would have won. So these maps do make a difference. Even in a Trump year, he would have won. So
Yeah.
it does make a difference to have fair maps. And I mean fair. It's still going to be a challenge for any candidate, right? Like you have to make your case, but it's fair.
Yeah, I think that Wickler really helped keep the state purple
Mm,
because
agreed.
we could have easily gone the way of Missouri or even Ohio. Ohio is so heartbreaking for me
Yeah.
because Ohio for decades was almost like the ultimate purple state and it went so deeply red. I think it's got a chance to go back a little bit blue this year. They've got a great governor candidate, Dr. Amy Acton,
Yeah.
running against a MAGA guy. We'll see what happens. But again, on Wickler, he tried to become the National Party chair and
Mhm.
lost out to Ken Martin of
Yep.
Minnesota, whose tenure has been, to put it mildly, very,
Rocky.
very rocky.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Do you see a scenario where Wickler once again tries for that position?
Maybe it's a question I should have asked him. What is your
Yeah.
plan over the next 2 years? I've got some ideas of what it looks like. Um, but I could see, being a party chair, is a thankless position, whether you're county party chair, state party chair, DNC chair. So I think there's a lot of calculus that would go into that. And I think what people are finding is that it's just not, there's not a magic bullet. And also you have to change a system and you also have to be open to changing that system. I think one of the challenges that the DNC faced right away was that they kind of stepped on their own feet when they were kind of pushing away the younger, more progressive candidates. And to the credit of everyone in Wisconsin, we didn't do that when folks said, "I want to run for office." We're not gonna push them out the way the DNC maybe did. And I'm not a part of the DNC, so I don't know what
Right.
internal things went on there.
Whoever ultimately, whether it's Ken Martin or someone else, whoever is the DNC chair, I just do hope that they go back to that Howard Dean
Oh,
principle of 50 state strategy. You've got
yes.
to run candidates in all 50 states in every single legislative district.
LFG, let's do it.
Yeah, that to me, see, when a party basically throws in the towel and says we're not even going to run in that district, that just is so deflating
Yeah,
for people living in those districts who do want to see change.
yeah, 100%. I feel that every day. You
So,
know.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I grew
Yeah,
up in Dave Obie's 7th congressional district. I thought that the whole state was a Democratic state. I had no idea that we could swing this hard.
oh, you are in the seventh CD, right?
I am. Now
Yeah.
you're
Is
thinking
that
about
so who's is that
that's
where
Tom Tiffany's district. Yeah.
okay. And who are the candidates right now for that seat?
Oh my goodness, I'm so glad you asked. We have a very raucous Republican primary happening where Sean Duffy, our current transportation secretary's son-in-law, is running as a candidate.
Michael
Kevin,
Alfonso.
oh, yep, you've probably heard of him.
Yeah,
And then we have Kevin Hermaning, who's been kind of a longtime resident. He was the youngest hostage in the Iran hostage crisis.
right.
And then there's also a couple other candidates. Jesse Eben, who lives in Stanley. I actually did have a chance to meet her. She came to one of our county board meetings and was
Hmm.
interested in some of the activism happening around windmill siting. So, and then there's another Nina Baum. She's young. She's a
Yeah.
dog musher. She's got some pretty progressive ideas for a Republican. And then, of course, on the Democratic side, we have a 3 candidate race. I would say Fred Clark is probably running ahead of everyone else just based on what I'm seeing. But you also have Ginger
Right.
Murray and Chris Armstrong. So that one has not been raucous, but that Republican primary has been wild.
It really has been, and all Alfonso has going for him is Donald Trump's endorsement. That is it.
And a bunch of transportation lobbying money, but what else?
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, yeah, exactly. Now that district, obviously, as you said, Dave Obey, legendary Democrat, represented it for many years. So it can be won by a Democrat, right?
I don't know what to say to that because, it's been what now? It's been about 15 years, possibly.
Yeah.
And uh, in a normal moment, it's been up 20 points Republicans. Now, I do think, depending on the recipe of who is elected in these primaries, you could find a competitive race. Would it be a durable win? Maybe if we win this time, do we win in 2 years? That's a good question to ask. But I would take 2 years over no years. So
Right.
let's go. All
See,
in.
this has been another one of my concerns with Francesca Hong is you want your governor nominee to have at least some kind of coattail effect. And it's been confusing for me because I can't figure out if her supporters, her core base, are the kind of people who will go into that voting booth and vote just for her and then leave everything blank, or will they support Democrats up and down the ballot? I hope it's the latter.
Yeah, it's interesting because even when she was in the assembly, she still is in the assembly, but even, when she was first elected, she'd be coming up to Wausau and talking to people. I mean, she talked to me when I was mayor. She would show up, she would support me. She shows up to support our Hmong community. I'm sure I will see her
Yeah.
again in a few days at Hmong Wausau Fest. So I think that she has been building a coalition that is aware of more local and down ballot races. And I can only hope that she'll continue that. I think that's going to be critical of any Democratic candidates.
Yes.
And you have a David Crowley who served in every level of government. So, well, maybe not federal, but state and local. So
Hmm.
he does understand that effect too. So I do think this is all really important to be talking about.
Yeah, I agree. Let's close out, Katie, by talking about what's going on in Marathon County right now. You got elected to the county board in April. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
And what are your priorities on the county board right now?
Sure. So when I was first elected, this is actually my second like tour of duty on the county board. I was elected in 2016, and I was very focused at the time on saving our healthcare center. We have a nursing home facility that is owned by the county, and then we have all of our county's mental and physical health facility is also it's in my district. Lives just a half a mile away from me, and so that was really what I was focused on. I'm still focused on that. I'm especially focused on some of the things related to mental health care. Obviously, we've seen such an increase in the need. We're seeing a lot more unhoused folks that need resources. So the county's actually gotten involved in some of the resources for the homeless population, which has been really important. But I've also had the opportunity, the county board chair and I have a different relationship now than we did before. And he appointed me to the Wisconsin Counties Association steering committee for health and human services policies. So I've had the
Excellent.
opportunity to talk through some of those policies that we want to support at a state level, like put all of our energy behind. So that's been really great too. What we're seeing is just we need more support from the state when it
Mm,
comes to funding, when it comes to maybe even helping get professionals into these positions.
right.
So, this is something that's real. So that's kind of what I'm focused on. But we have a very raucous discussion happening around energy right now. We have a couple proposed wind turbine farms, and folks in the western part of the county are very upset. They don't like that farmland is going to be used with pretty big windmills,
Mhm.
bigger than any that we have in the state, actually. And so we've had a very big discussion and also a big like educational push because this is all regulated by the state. And we also need to recognize what our role is as a county, and understanding that we would get utility aid payments and we can also negotiate on behalf of our people to get what they need. So right now we're in the midst of that discussion. It's been difficult. I'm a villain in some areas.
Are you supportive of the wind power?
I do think we need to be thinking differently about how we're generating energy. And I think that building more gas is not the
No.
sustainable future. I I wish that we had more conversation about what does justice look like when it comes to energy production. You have a lot of these coal plants and gas facilities in
Right.
areas that are affecting people of lower income, people of color. And now that windmills are being brought into areas where other folks are living, they don't want that. But I do think it's a justice discussion too.
You've got one of the largest county boards in the state, I believe, right?
It is the largest elected county board in the nation. We have 38
30,
members.
30
38.
is out of that 38, I know it's nonpartisan, but is there a progressive caucus that includes people like you?
Yeah, I would say we're not formalized, but if I'm just counting on like, oh, who would be my guaranteed friendlies? We got about six. And then there's
Okay.
maybe a couple folks that would be swing. And there's a lot of people who I would say are very conservative. However, as you know, with local government, sometimes those lines aren't as clear cut. And
Right.
we've had plenty of unanimous decisions on things related to issues that could be controversial, but they're not because we've worked through them. We've talked about them in a deliberative fashion. We've opened it up to public people. But I do think this wind energy generation thing is going to be one of those things that ends up being a little more party line, but we'll be ready for it.
All right. Well, I thank you so much for doing this, and I would love to have you on again, maybe after your board decides on that win. I think that's going to make a
Yeah.
lot of waves
Yep. Yeah,
on the
definitely.
state.
Keep me on your short list.
You will definitely be. Thank you again, Katie. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.